Well, a former Canadian official went down to Mexico and started advocating for a really dangerous rhetoric during the time that these trade negotiations between Canada and the United States are at an incredibly frail time. And he says some egregious things that just don't help the situation. Yes, some can say he's not really involved. However, getting out there and talking to members of the Mexican government, as well as other members of the American government at a Congress in Mexico, is probably not a good idea. We'll be talking about that. We'll also be talking about the United States' reaction to what Canada's been doing during these trade talks, and we'll get into all of it. Welcome to the Elevate Podcast, y'all. I'm your host, Josh. I'm grateful to be back on with you yet again. If you get any value from today's episode, take the time to like, share, and subscribe. It helps get us to new audiences, new people, and helps show people there's a different option than what the mainstream media has to offer. Now let's get into our first story, shall we? So Charlie Angus, former NDP MP, who still says, yeah, I'm out of politics. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm getting too old. I don't want to enjoy it. I'm not enjoying this anymore. Well, you could have fooled me. Decides to hop on down to the Pan American Congress in Mexico to flout some insane ideology, insane rhetoric over our negotiations with the United States and standing up to the USA. This man, in a 2-minute video, shows you how deluded some Canadians are on these issues. And here is, oh boy, this is tough.
So we're in this moment, the planet is on fire, and they would rather burn our planet to the ground because that's what gangster fascists do. So I'm going to step outside the box just a bit and give you a sense of what we are doing. Ordinary Canadians have launched a boycott of every single thing American. It wasn't organized, it wasn't planned, it doesn't come from our leadership, it comes from ordinary men and women who won't go into a grocery store and buy a single product from the United States. The shelves are empty. And where there are American products, they're turned upside down so you can tell and not buy them. Within 3 months, we started to see produce from Mexico and Peru. So I am here to say we need to build this alliance together where we start to trade and build with each other. We got lots of snow in the winter. It's hard for us to get green foods. But we will buy your foods because no Canadian will buy American. We stopped travel immediately. We are going to cost the United States economy $29 billion this year from people saying, I will not go back to the United States, I will not visit, I will not cross the border. The boycott is a powerful tool to take the fascists on. If everyone was involved in the boycott around the world, CNBC predicts a $90 billion hit to the U.S. economy. They are only going to stop the threats to the rule of law if it hurts. And we have to make it hurt. So I come to you to say that we have this moment of opportunity of our nations to work together because your nations are under threat. Your planet is under threat. Our way of life is under threat. And we cannot build the sustainable, progressive future that we are all working towards if we are under the threat of this kind of totalitarian, authoritarian gangsterism. So our first job in Canada right now is to stop that, but it's also to make sure that they don't exploit this crisis to further the agenda of the planet burners, because sustainability is what we have to fight for, because sustainability is rooted in democracy and it's rooted in the future of all of us together. So I look towards my colleagues here to help us and for us to help you build this democratic, sustainable future.
Democratic, sustainable future. Yet we're going to take on the fascists, the climate burners, to essentially, I don't know, name call is, quite frankly, insane. It's ridiculous. And to call what the United States are doing as gangster fascism is, well, a term coined by Angus himself, is not really helpful at this point in time. Again, this is a Congress that is and has left-wing Mexican officials, has some progressive officials coming from the United States. This isn't like not all politicians that are active right now are at this conference. However, a lot of stakeholders in both countries, in Mexico and the United States, are at this conference, and this is who Charlie Angus is talking to. We have to take on American fascism. We have to take on the climate burners. We have to take back our democracy. My friends, guys like Angus don't believe in democracy. They only believe in democracy if it goes their way. They will always do their best to push this kind of rhetoric, divisive rhetoric, a rhetoric that leads to people attacking each other because they view them as the other. And that's what Angus did here. And this, my friends, is very dangerous, especially at a time when negotiations between the United States and Canada are so strained that, guess what? We're getting nowhere close to a deal these days. Right now, the rhetoric has changed from getting a deal done to, we'll wait till USMCA gets renegotiated in a year time. We'll get ready for that one. It's like the equivalent of getting smoked 10-1 in game one of a series. Be like, you know what? Let's just pack it in here, folks. We'll finish off the last 3 minutes of this game. Let's focus on the next one. That's the same energy that's taking place right now. And guys like Charlie Angus are so dangerous to places like Canada that this rhetoric doesn't help. What do you mean gangster fat? What are you talking about right now? No, really, what are you talking about right now? And it's people like Charlie Angus who are very loud, very in your face, that keep people, conservatives, from speaking up in Canada. You wonder why Canada is such a progressive nation. It's because people like Charlie get very loud and they have positions of power and they like to intimidate you from speaking up. And that's exactly what this was. Yeah, we got the elbows up campaign. We're going to stick it to the United States. We're not going down there. We're not buying their stuff. Bam, bam, bam. What it has only done is only hurt Canada further. This rhetoric is killing our economy because our media, our political class, have got it into the heads of Canadians that we can take on one of the biggest economies in the world and the biggest military in the world. And we're the only ones standing up. Okay, got it. Well, guess what? We're the only ones standing up. We're the only ones standing up so much that Canada tried to cut the U.S. out of a deal between the three nations, Mexico, United States, and Canada. We sent our officials down to Mexico to have a conversation with the president of Mexico. Hey, let's get a bilateral agreement going between us and Mexico. Let's get your food up here. We're going to bypass the United States. We're going to get out of this. And we're going to go elbows up, baby. Well, Mexico said this. Mexico's Sheinbaum says no need for bilateral trade deal with Canada. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum on Wednesday ruled out a bilateral trade agreement with Canada when asked about the possibility, following what she called a very good meeting with top Canadian government ministers a day earlier. We have the trade deal with the United States, Canada, and Mexico. There is no need, Sheinbaum said during her morning press conference where she said she discussed expanding direct trade with Canada. Sheinbaum also confirmed Prime Minister Mark Carney will soon travel to Mexico for direct talks, but no date has been set for that visit. Tuesday's meeting was a preparatory meeting for Prime Minister Carney's visit, and it was a very good meeting, she told reporters. She said an expansion of direct trade with Canada was among the topics discussed, but clarified that did not mean a separate trade deal from the Canada-United States-Mexico Agreement on Free Trade, also known as CUSMA in Canada, USMCA in the United States, because everyone has hurt feelings over which initials should come first in that name. Americans who are watching the show know CUSMA and USMCA are talking about the exact same trade agreement, just Canada gets in their feelings and puts a C in front of it, and obviously Trump is Trump, and USMCA is put at the front of it. But if you ask me, from a strictly business perspective, the A side should probably have their name first, and then subsequent afterwards. But Canada gets in their feelings, like, oh, it's CUSMA. Okay, whatever. Let's get over ourselves. Let's just use one term to refer to it. But this is why people get confused in politics these days, is because we use separate names for the same thing, and just it's only because of people's feelings. However, I digress. This is a situation that's happened. We can't get anything going with the United States on a deal on these core sectoral tariffs of 35%, 50% steel and aluminum here in Canada. So they decided, you know what, let's see if we can get a deal done directly with Mexico. Mexico says, we're not that stupid. We're trying to get a deal done with the United States as well. And guess what? Trump just gave us a 90-day reprieve to get things figured out. Us doing a deal with you is suicide for us. Are you nuts? Get the heck out of here. What are you doing? And that's been Canada in a nutshell. We have probably some of the worst negotiators at the table right now. And again, it's being pushed that, whoa, they are such great negotiators. That's why nothing's getting done right now, is because they're negotiating hard on Trump. Okay. When Trump's not really talking to you, I don't know if you're negotiating tough. You're either being unreasonable, you're being emotional, or you're not really offering much. Which one is it? He's hitting us hard because that's kind of how this operates. Almost every deal I've seen, now that I've started to see the pattern, is you invest X in the United States economy, your tariffs come down. You don't invest in the United States economy, your tariffs go up. That's kind of the machine mechanism that Trump is using right now. And we're seeing it across the board. And right now, Canada, what I imagine is also fighting for is tariff-free everything. And because that's been our relationship, and I understand it. However, Trump right now in the United States are in debt recovery mode. And they want to get their debt recovery up and make sure they are getting money from wherever they can. And that's why I find it really funny, seeing how Canada's like, this is unfair. Hey, Trump is doing to us what you do to your own citizens and tax them up the yin-yang, just trying to get money from them. Except for at least to a degree in this case, from what I'm understanding, Trump's asking some fair things. It sucks for us because that's not been has not been the natural order of things for the past decades. But Trump's just like, all right, let's do, one for one here. And that's uncomfortable for us because we're a smaller economy. We're a little bit more delicate. We rely so much on the United States, and that puts us in a very precarious situation. That's where we're currently at. And I talk about us being a propagandized nation, though. This is what CTV posted about this. Mexico seeks more trade with Canada in face of Trump tariffs. Really? This was posted on the same day, August 6th, 2025, yesterday. And this was posted by Reuters via Global Mail, August 6th, yesterday, about an hour separation. And CTV says Mexico is looking for more trade with Canada. Well, guess what? That is technically true. This is how CTV twists it, if you realize. If you look at this article that they have here, and it was also quoted in the previous article we looked at, it says right here, from Sheinbaum herself, we have the treaty, obviously, but we also want Canadian companies to continue investing to expand direct trade between Canada and Mexico. Sheinbaum said Thursday after meeting Canada's finance minister, François-Philippe Champagne, and foreign minister, Anita Anand. She said, I don't want a direct trade. I want to expand our trade amongst our current deal. That's what she said. But because of the narrative, Mexico seeks more trade with Canada in face of Trump tariffs. It's a half-truth at best. This was a little more accurate of what actually happened. A bilateral agreement was denied because they want to expand the trade with the current agreement of USMCA. But this is how our media tends to do half-truths, takes a different perspective, and tries to deceive to a degree of what's actually happening because we are getting smoked in these negotiations. But as I have said previously, as we're getting these crazy sectoral tariffs being put on our softwood lumber, steel and aluminum, these heavy industries that are on the outside of the USMCA deal, well, as we can't find a deal on this, it looks like Carney is waving the white flag saying we're not going to get a deal done. We're looking forward to the renegotiation of USMCA in about a year. They have kind of stopped the rhetoric of trying to get a deal now. So they've gone to doing things like this. I told you last week, a couple days ago, and also last week, how a Algoma steel plant in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, who 60% of their clientele is in the United States, are asking for $500 million of subsidy help. Well, softwood lumber is also asking for help, and they're getting it from Mark Carney. Canada, to give lumber industry up to $1.2 billion in aid to cope with the U.S. duties. And so it starts. Get ready for inflation, baby. No one's buying our stuff because of these tariffs, and we can't get a deal done with the United States because we're too prideful, and we think we know better I don't know if our current leaders actually do know better at this point. And now the secondary strategy is, well, we just have to give our businesses money so that they can keep people employed. That's the strategy. That's the focus. That's what they're doing here. The United States, which has for decades accused Canada of dumping lumber on the domestic market, imposes both anti-dumping and countervailing duties on imports of timber used in house construction. Canada denies it's dumping wood. The dispute is an irritant in broader talks between the United States and Canada on its new economic and defense relationship. U.S. President Donald Trump hiked tariffs on some Canadian imports to 35% last week after negotiators failed to meet an August 1st deadline. And last month, the U.S. Commerce Department said it was almost tripling anti-dumping duties on most Canadian softwood to 20.56%. Canadian officials say they expect that when these are added to higher countervailing charges due to announce shortly, total duties will rise to 34.5% from 14.5%. It's looking a little ugly for some of our core industries here in this country. And I'm keep being told by the Liberal Party of Canada, our current government, that Mark Carney is the man with the plan. His daddy, Carney, he knows what he's doing. It'll be fine. He'll tell us when it's all good. And we're going to keep giving money to our industries to subsidize them because no one's buying their stuff. And these people refuse to get a deal done because they're so stinking prideful. That's my perspective. That's how I'm seeing it. They've been talking on and off for so long. They're saying Donald Trump is being unreasonable, but they still haven't told us what exactly is being unreasonable. I've said before, I'm hearing more from the United States side of this than I am hearing from the Canadian side on it. So when only one narrative's out there, you're like, okay, I'm sure that's a stretch to a degree, but that's the only narrative I'm hearing. So I'm tending to believe that if the other is staying quiet, not saying nothing. And U.S. Ambassador Pete Hoekstra hopped on CBC Power and Politics, and he was explaining his frustration with the whole elbows up campaign, the whole thing, that Mr. Charlie Angus was advocating for down in Mexico.
They're an irritant right now. I've talked to someone, it's kind of like, yeah, we see what Canada's doing. We see the personal attacks that, certain Canadian politicians are making against. They're very, very cognizant of everything that's going on in this trade realm and these negotiations.
That said, can you understand why in this moment there is the political space, there seems to be public support for Canada to have those elbows up? Can you see why Canadians are angry?
Actually, we've engaged in a strategy, a global strategy, to change how America does trade, all right? Most of these countries have found a way to work with us, to be constructive, and to reach an agreement with us. Canada at this point, they're in some cases they're angry. It is, the government's been very effective at selling the strategy of elbows up. Okay, but America needed to get its house in order, our financial house in order. The president wants prosperity, security, and stability for the American people. Trade was one of the elements that he indicated that he wanted to get under control to deliver a total solution. He's passed the big, beautiful tax bill that we think will bring manufacturing, provides incentives to create jobs in the United States of America. We've secured our border. These were things that we needed to do to straighten our house out to move forward. Canada needs to do what it needs to do. Your prime minister is doing some of the same things.
So you go, U.S. Ambassador Pete Hoekstra talking on what is going on. And again, the whole elbows up campaign. You can see why Canadians are mad, don't you? He's like, yeah, I can see why you're mad, but everyone else is finding ways to work with us, but you're not. So you tell me what the issue is. Canada's narrative is, everyone's just bowing to fascist Trump. And the United States rhetoric is, no, what we're asking for is fair. Everyone else is finding ways to work with us. Why can't you? Who do you believe? Granted, in some cases, you look at the EU, who signed a terrible deal for them, great deal for the United States, but terrible deal for the EU. And that's what I think is right now is the irritant happening between Canada and the United States. Is Canada's in a similar economic standpoint as the EU is. And Trump is taking advantage of that. And Canada's upset about that because we put ourselves in this situation. We put ourselves in a weakened state of negotiations. And we're mad that Trump is exposing it. So we call him a fascist. We call him names. Say, you're so evil. Our politicians, our leaders, have screwed us 6 ways to Sunday for the better part of a decade. And we have the audacity to be upset about the man who's been in power in the United States for what? 5 of those 10 years? Oh, it's his fault. Is it? We were struggling long before he came around again for the second term. There was a bunch of flags flying around of the previous prime minister of how upset people were with him. And then Trump came along. And then the elbows up campaign came along, and everyone ate it up and made sure that Trump was the big, bad guy. And we still have officials who refuse to do their jobs, and they're doing a great job of using our media apparatus to convince the people that it's all America's fault, and none of the responsibility lies on the people who have been in power for 10 stinking years. But we have a new leader. It's a new government. Yeah, okay. Tell it to someone who actually believes it. Just because you change the face doesn't mean everything under the hood has changed. And I'll leave it at that. But anyways, enjoy your day. Have yourselves a good one. I'm out.